Hi, this is Amy Magyar from FromWithin Coaching. And today, with the help of Coach Augusta Goodcrawl, who has been with me on this journey, we are unpacking the CliftonStrengths of ideation. So, hello, Augusta.
Hey, Amy.
We also have a guest coach who's with us today. And so Mary McClements is not only a coach at FromWithin Coaching, but she also has a very special gift, and that is the number one strength for her is ideation. So we are going to be having a conversation with Mary about ideation and how that shows up and the highs and lows, and really helping you understand, at least from our perspective and our experiences, how ideation can show up. This is not meant to be in lieu of a coaching session. If you are just learning that you have ideation in your top 5 with CliftonStrengths, this is not in lieu of a coaching conversation with a coach to really understand how it shows up for you. But we're hoping this gets you excited to go ahead and dive deeper into your strengths. And whether that's using a coach or going directly to CliftonStrengths, this is about helping you explore, but at least giving you a little bit of an idea of ideation. And that was a pun. Anyway, Augusta, how are you?
I'm well this morning. How are both of y'all?
We are well. Good. We're just going to read it. You will know the truth of the way it feels. Ooh. We're going to talk about feeling and ideation because there's an interesting little, I think, challenge sometimes that happens. But Mary, thanks for coming. Thanks for being a part of this.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So as normal, I'm going to read the CliftonStrengths definition from the organization. For ideation, people strong in let's try that again. Hello. People strong in the ideation theme are fascinated by ideas. They're able to find connections between seemingly desperate or disparate phenomenon. I am all over the place this morning, so let me slow down. Basically, they're able to find connections between things that maybe don't seem sort of in any way connected. And that's actually what's really cool about ideation. And why it resonates for me, even though it's not in one of my top 5s, is that there's a connecting factor. And I'm someone that has connectedness. And so I really like ideation because it does help create connections. If I was to define in 1 or 2 words ideation, and I like to sort of make it shorter, it's innovation. And it is often people with ideation are bucking against what is normal, what is expected. And ideation can be so fun and so disrupting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because when people don't have ideation in your world, it can be a bit of a struggle about even change and what's next. But for me, the word innovation really stands out when I think about ideation. Augusto, you take a stab. It doesn't have to be just one word. It can be however you define ideation. But how do you define it?
Well, when I think of ideation, I'm very visual, and I think of popcorn in someone's head. Literally, the ideas are just ever present and constant. It's a strategic theme, so there's a thinking aspect to it. And what I love about it is all the ideas, when they're allowed to come out and be presented, not all of them are going to be, relevant or ones that work, but there's always something. And so I have a coach whose top strength is ideation, and his business plan is make things up. And he throws ideas out all the time. Some of them don't work, and he's not connected to the failure of it. But the ones that land are massively successful. So it's that popcorn that just constant and got to get out.
Yeah. Nice. Great visual. Mary, as someone with ideation as her first, when you say I have ideation, how do you describe it to people and help them understand it?
Creativity and connection, not just connecting ideas, but connecting people. I think ideation is, like you were saying, innovation. It's really close to creativity. I think I actually sometimes have a hard time describing it because if somebody doesn't really understand what ideation is, and I talk about connecting ideas, that's not enough. And so what I tend to say is I picture somebody like Paula Poundstone or David Sedaris, who happen both to be comedians, who are storytellers, but they'll start with this idea and they'll go all over the place. And then 5 minutes before they're done their their story, they've connected it to all these different things. And it's just, to me, like, I get chills when I talk about it, because it's this beautiful kind of tapestry of woven thoughts and ideas. And yeah, when it's done well.
Yes, yes. And we'll talk about sort of the highs and lows, right?
Right.
Mary, as someone with ideation, Augusta and I have been starting to really think about, according to CliftonStrengths, this is something that has been a huge part of your life for a very long time. And so I'm curious for you, if you think back to being the young Mary, where might it have shown up when you were younger? And you can define younger however you want to. It can be 5, it can be 20. It's whatever you want to do. But where do you think, as an example, it's shown up when you were younger?
Definitely. Well, I, very visually artistic. I was always doing art, but I would say more so, I would always have some new idea. Like, I'm going to start a new, like when I was 8, 9, 10, I'm going to start a newspaper for the neighborhood. I'm going to build this fort. I'm going to plan these things so that in a couple weeks, I was constantly like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try that. And I think where it was tough is that with my family, I'd be like, hey, look, I'm going to do this paper, and and I'd be so excited. And I think they got exhausted. It was like, oh, always Mary always has an idea, and yeah.
That is such a great example of ideation, is that is sort of, because your ideas were so prolific that maybe those around you weren't sure which ones you'd actually do, right? Or is that an idea that's actionable, that you're going to take action, or is it just an idea? And I want to remind people, Augusta, you talk about this all the time, is the fuel of our strengths is in the doing, right? So it's with Mary, it's the creating ideas that fuels her versus even activating on the ideas, right? Yeah. The fuel comes from the process of ideation, which is so neat. And you just so beautifully described it. Will you do us a favor, Mary? Will you run through your top 5 strengths so our viewers and our listeners can see what, just sort of what else are in your top 5?
Well, ideation is the first. Positivity, strategic, futuristic, and adaptability.
Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Just out of curiosity, how does ideation play with all of those? Is there any that it plays really well with? Is there any that it's in conflict with?
I think it plays really well with positivity, strategic, and futuristic. Adaptability, it plays well with when an idea gets shut down. So, for example, it's interesting because when I look back on my career, I just happened to be, and maybe it was no mistake at all, 4 different times I came into a brand new program as the leader of the program, and was asked to basically create it from the ground up. That was great. Loved it. Because I was able to use the ideation and the positivity to kind of encourage the team and to help people, see the possibilities.
Futuristic.
Same with strategic, and and then this is in the futuristic with ideas is how is this going to benefit us in the future? How is this going to make me feel or make us feel, or what's this going to do for people in the future? And I had mentioned my family being kind of exhausted by my ideas. I have worked with some folks who probably were ideation, very top, but really struggled with when to bring the ideas to the team. And that's something that with ideation, you can really get tripped up on. It's like your mind is constantly thinking. You might be in a meeting about how are we going to do these spreadsheets differently? And the ideation person is like, bing, 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 thinking about something, that to them seemingly has nothing, or to them is seemingly connected, but to everyone else, it's not connected.
Right.
And it's like, I think that's one of the challenges with ideation, people who have ideations, is knowing who your audience is, what the discussion is, not, because it can be exhausting as the receiver of somebody
Mm-hmm.
who has ideation.
You know what's interesting? And I'm gonna look to you, Augusta, after this to see what questions you have for Mary. What you just described is such an incredible question that I have is, if ideation is first and adaptability is fifth, did adaptability come up because with someone with ideation who learned,
Yeah.
potentially after being shut down, right? That you learned exactly all those things you just talked about, understanding your audience and being able to flex and move. And I mean, you just so beautifully talked about adaptability as number 5. And it's like, has it always been there? Or did it grow because of ideation and having to make sure that not counterbalanced ideation, but supported it to make sure that it continued to be a superpower?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it was always there. I think as I matured and grew older, like, I think also part of the adaptability is, if you have ideation and you're throwing these ideas out and people are like, stop, enough, like, we need to focus on this, you can go into a downward spiral of, no one likes my ideas. But with adaptability, I feel like, and positivity, it's like, okay, let's go on the next one, or we'll hold it here. It's not like such a blow to the ego.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm answering your question
Oh no, beautifully,
perfectly, but
Yeah, I see them playing well together, actually, Mary, because for me, when I think of adaptability, I think of that ability to pivot, that flexibility, but also, I've worked with people with adaptability who are trying to stick to long-term projects or long-term goals, and they can't, because that is like torture for them, because it's really wanting that change and that moving, that constant weaving and moving within something. So they tend to want to do shorter goals, to
absolutely.
move themselves along. So I could see how, for you, it would be hard not to have that adaptability because of your ideation almost. I don't know. That's what I.
No, I hear what you're saying. And I think, like, with ideation and futuristic, I definitely am, oh, idea, let's do that.
Yeah.
Or idea, let's do that. And maybe I'll pick 2 of the ideas and I'll move forward and I'll get 3/4 of the way through it. And then I'm like, actually, no, I think that's a better one. That's also where I struggle with ideation and the futuristic. It's like, the world is my oyster. I want to do it all. And then I think, oh, I think that's better. So, and I still struggle with that, like, the long-term. And that's why it's great to have a team for, if you have ideation, where you can, brainstorm and other people take it and run with it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Super
Augusta,
awareness.
what else comes up for you that you want to know from Mary?
I guess I have a question about the creativity part of it. Like, I do know that, ideation almost has 3 C's that are part of the, integral to ideation, and it's creativity, complexity, and connected. We talked about some of those. But for creative, I find that there's actually almost two forms of creativity in ideation. One of them is more, I guess you could say, proactive. And you spoke about it a little bit when you talked about your childhood. It's kind of creating something from nothing. These ideas just come to you. And then there's reactive type, which is actually creating by reacting to what exists or what is. And I'm wondering if you have a sense of which, if are you fluid in both, or do you tend to be one or the other?
Really good question. I mean, my first thought is, I think I'm fluid in both, and because of the adaptability. If there's already something in place and it needs to be made bigger, better, different, whatever, like, I could start midway.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't know if this is going to be answering your question, but I think so I'm reading this book about Leonardo da Vinci. And I think if he had anything, he had probably ideation. He probably had futuristic. He, he had this incredible ability almost. And so, like, I feel like there's realistic ideation and there's unrealistic ideation. And I think he had both. He had the ability to design these flying machines in the 1400s. And it was so far in the future that his ideas never came to fruition. Like he actually designed hundreds of like war type tools,
Yeah.
like bridges that could be built and were easy to carry, you know, like
Mm.
all this stuff. And it was too much ideation for his time. And
Or too far away from what was happening right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So yeah, so I feel like his idea, if he had ideation, I'd like to dream that he does, because I would like to be compared to Leonardo da Vinci. You know, he had volumes and volumes and volumes of ideas. And, you know, I think actually only one of his war devices was created. And what was it? I just read it. I think it was the gunpowder gun, you know, like the spark that shoots anyway. I honestly don't think I answered your question, Augusta.
No, that's all right. I was just, you know, some people really fall into one or you know, the other category. Just wondering what your, you know, what your thoughts are for you, if you're fluid between those, or kind of, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely, you know.
Augusta, will you share again the two that you're talking about?
Proactive
Yep.
and reactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so proactive is, again, just creating, you know, those ideas just seem to come from nowhere.
Yeah.
And the reactive is actually seeing what's there and being able to go, oh, you know, I can, and you know, and with strategic in there too. I mean, which works, I think would work really well with both. That was a question I had. Just
Yeah.
you know.
And as you repeated that, I think of, I am able to use my proactive ideation better when I have space and time to think. You know, if I don't give myself the space, to just like sit in my studio or sit somewhere and just think, then I just don't have the opportunity to, you know, to be coming up with the ideas. I think another piece that's important to mention about ideation is I love storytelling. I love hearing stories. I love telling stories. And I think for me, part of it is because it reveals connections and ideas about the world, about people. And so when I was working at a university, I really was interested in the people's that I worked with, their stories, because in my mind, if they were telling me some random story from when they were 24, it might spark in my brain a strength that they have that I never would have thought of. And here would be a great project for them. So I think that's part of the reason I like storytelling so much, is because it reveals connections.
Sure, which generates the ideas.
Yeah.
Speaking of connections, I just want to read something that with ideation, my sort of takeaway is that it's not just a passion for ideas, but it's testing the limits of an idea. And I use this metaphor of sort of finding its branches and envisioning the links and connections. So I love trees. As you can see, I have a little bit of a jungle in my office actually right now. My spider plants came in for the season, but I love trees because their branches connect and go in so many different directions. And it's a great example of something that is actually very structurally sound and stagnant, at least in its root ball, but yet it grows, right? And so I just think about, you know, how maybe that's part of what Leonardo da Vinci was doing, was sometimes testing the limits of an idea of, is this ready for this time frame or even this world in the next 100 years? And as we saw, it may have taken another 500 years for one of his ideas for somebody to be like, I wonder if I could do that. You know, it just wasn't ready, but he wasn't afraid to not play with the ideas, right? There's a beauty in whether it's right or wrong, it's an idea. And I think there's maybe even some of the creativity, Augusta, you're talking about too.
Well, yeah, and the ability to get them out. And I know I've worked with clients who have high ideation, and it's almost like if they need to get them out, if they're dry, you know, it just can drive one almost
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're like, what is wrong with me? And so by being able to, like, I even say, I'm thinking of one client, I said, get a notebook and get it out. Just get them out, because
Yeah,
then they're just not swirling like that popcorn, like the Jiffy Pop is not getting bigger and bigger in your head.
mm-hmm.
You might not do anything with those ideas, but get them out. And so, because you never know, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting. You were talking about the client that you work with who his business is like coming up with ideas. And I don't know how many years ago, a couple people had asked me to help them with like business ideas. And I was like, yeah. And you know, how about this? How about that? Da-da. And they were, and no fault to their own, their strengths were in other places, but they were like, what, that like, there was not the connection for them. And it would like, so I had to kind of bring the ideas down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like there wasn't an ability, maybe it was because I wasn't describing it clearly enough to them, but there wasn't the ability to be like, oh yeah, that actually could be a great end piece. And yeah, so that's, that can be super frustrating.
I think that's a challenge for anybody who's working like on a team or with somebody who has high ideation, is to be able to allow that the ideas to come out, and also work within themselves to be curious and look at possibility. Because you're right, if people are unable to receive, then it must be so frustrating for both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Right. Like,
so if you have somebody that's high ideation, how can you celebrate that, never knowing what the possibility might be that, you know, that idea, or it might not fit where you think it's going to fit, could actually benefit in some broader, you know, way. So
yeah.
And that leads me to the question, Mary, for you is, if you think about ideation for yourself, ideas for you versus ideas for other, is there one that flows easier, or one that is more challenging, or it doesn't matter, they just flow?
Yeah. I would say currently right now, just with what's going on in the world, and you know, I'm not with a team all the time, you know, interesting. I would say for others, always flows easily.
Yeah.
I have a friend who had this idea about how to support local university students who couldn't really afford housing, and she was coming up with ideas of how she could. And oh my gosh, it was I was like, oh, can we talk about this? Can we brainstorm about this? And it was like, it was fantastic. She doesn't want to she ultimately doesn't want to follow through with it, but it was so fun. I think where it flows for me personally right now is my ideation is really wrapped up in how is something going to make me feel in the future. So here in Vermont, January and February is really dark and dreary. And so I have been changing my environments that will help me in January and February. So I'm redoing my garage to be a studio. I'm painting certain rooms to be brighter. I'm like, you know, like, so just these ideas of that are connected with like an emotional state or a feeling state in the future.
I think what's so beautiful, I guess, I don't know if you picked up on it, I'm going to get my notes here, but part of what she just did was the ideas were coming from this futuristic mindset of how will things be like in the future? How will I also adapt to January and February in Vermont, which, you know, it's cold. So it's, how am I going to handle that? But then the strategic of looking of, you know, what is needed? What do I need in all of this? I mean, just, they all showed up.
Beautiful.
They all showed up, Mary. It's really cool to see that.
Yeah. And I totally love that. And I don't know which of my strengths is about the environment, but like my environment's really, really important. You know,
adaptability, and then everything else too, right?
Yes.
So what is what is strategic is what is in my environment that's working and not working? What is happening? You know, what do I see as themes, and what do I see that's missing too? So there's a lot. And just, I don't know about you, Augusta, but for me, positivity is also coming in, because I think, you know, does anybody want to live in a dark,
Well,
dreary
exactly.
space, but her positivity is, she's talking about lightning physically, lightening the color. That's positivity, right?
Yeah.
That's that
Well,
energy
that's
in the
very
world.
true. And I think, as coaches, we know the importance of environment and how it either supports or takes away energy, for everyone, and the different types of environments. But, how can you work with your environment so that you can be standing strong on your strengths, that you've got the energy available, to, emotionally, because you're feeling a certain way, to, navigate from your strengths instead of at maybe the bottom end of them. So
Yeah.
that's a cool, they're definitely tied in together.
Yeah, super good. I want to be mindful of the time because we know that we can talk about this for another 5
Of
hours with
course.
Mary. Mary, what is something that you want to make sure that those that are listening who either have ideation or have someone in their life with ideation, what do you think is most important for them to know about ideation?
I would say if you're somebody with ideation, it's really easy to think that your ideas are useless, that they're not important, that they couldn't bring good to the world. And I think it's important to find the places where your ideas are appreciated and can be used, if that's what you want, for the greater good, for whatever it might be. For somebody who, let's say, lives with or is a partner with somebody with ideation, I think it's really important. And I was in a relationship with somebody years ago who would say, I can only talk about one topic at a time, because I could go off and loop it around, and he would say, okay, wait, what are we talking about? Are we talking about this or what? And he would say, can we just focus on this? And oh yeah, okay, yeah. And I've gotten really good at that. So yeah. Just ask,
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Augusta, anything for wrap up that you want to share a little bit or point out that you heard today?
Just kind of reiterating what Mary said, is it's such a beautiful strength when it is understood within yourself, and there's no judgment around it.
Yeah.
And also you're, in a job, career, environment, or, partnering with somebody who also understands it, because it's you can, like my coach says, he just makes stuff up, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and he just has fun with it,
Yeah.
letting yourself have fun with it. And it makes his team crazy, but they know that that's who he is, and so they support that, because when it works really well.
Yeah.
So
That is
yeah.
the patience of knowing, right? Of knowing these
Just knowing.
ideation, and it's going to come.
Yeah.
That's what they're getting. One of the things that I'm going to leave us with is sometimes with ideators that I've worked with, sometimes they try to think their feelings and not actually feel them. And so I just want to say with ideation, because it is often so much up here in a beautiful way, is remember that you can't think your way out of feeling. And so just making sure that the feelings in you continue to flow as much as the ideas. So I will leave it at that. Ladies, thank you. Thank you for unpacking ideation today. This is, again, we could talk about it for another 5 hours. This is just an opportunity to really, Mary, you were so honest about, both sides of it, both the highs and lows of ideation. So I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
And Augusta, as always, an amazing partner with me. Beautiful to bring up some of the different kinds of ideation that can come up, the reactive versus proactive. So thank you for bringing that in. I appreciate it. With that being said, we will see you for your other 4 strengths. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you both.